For many years, the Galactic Council treated the rumors like a joke, nothing but a funny story repeated in bars, in military halls, in academy classrooms. Some scouts reported a tiny human fleet moving in deep space, appearing suddenly on long-range scanners and then disappearing just as fast. But nobody took it seriously. Humans were harmless. They were quiet. They avoided war. Their entire navy could fit inside a single docking bay of a mid-tier empire. They didn't build superweapons. They didn't conquer planets. They didn't intimidate their neighbors. They were the galaxy's softest species. Everyone believed that. Everyone accepted that. Everyone laughed at that. But everything changed the day the cosmic storm arrived. It began near the outer belt, a distant region where stars were old and space felt colder than normal. First one star went dark. Then another. Then entire systems disappeared into the storm, swallowed like pebbles falling into a black ocean. No debris. No explosions. No survivors. Just silence, uncomfortable, heavy silence. Civilizations panicked. Trade routes shut down. Empires evacuated border worlds. Children cried in shelters. Even the proudest militaries felt a chill. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings day and night. Their strongest fleets were sent to investigate the outer belt. Dozens of dreadnoughts, thousands of fighter wings, entire battle groups moved with heavy tension toward the dying region. But what they found froze every heart. Shattered planets drifting like broken glass, cities torn from their surfaces, giant moons cracked open like eggs. And yet, not a single burn mark. No signs of weapon fire. No signs of resistance. Planets that once held billions were empty, silent, dead. The storm had not destroyed systems. It had erased them. The admirals stood in disbelief. Their ships scanned every corner, every fragment, every dust grain. Nothing made sense. Then something appeared on the sensors, a faint signal, approaching slowly from the far edge of the storm. The fleets prepared for combat, expecting a massive enemy force. What emerged instead was laughable. A tiny fleet. Only 12 ships. Old designs. Strange engines. Unimpressive armor. Small weapons. The alien commanders burst out laughing. One admiral joked, perhaps humans finally learned how to copy pirate ships. Another added, Earth must be sending their museum collection. Even the AI tactical systems labeled the approaching fleet as non-threat. But then the scans updated. Crew species. Human. Every laugh stopped. No one understood why humans would come here. They had no power, no stake, no reason to challenge a cosmic storm. And yet the 12 ships moved with a calm, steady confidence, straight toward the storm's heart. The alien fleets hailed them again and again, warning them to stop, turn around, retreat, regroup. But the human fleet did not respond. Not a single ship slowed down. Not a single signal returned. They moved like soldiers who had already accepted their fate. The admirals argued, confused, anxious. One of them shouted, "They must be insane. No fleet can enter that storm and survive." Another replied, "Maybe they don't understand the danger." But deep inside, even they didn't believe that. The humans weren't confused. They weren't blind. They looked like they were returning to a place they had seen before. Then the impossible happened. The storm reacted. As soon as the human ships crossed a certain line, the storm shifted, as if waking up. The swirling clouds tightened, darkened, twisted with angry motion. Massive lightning arcs spread across the void, reaching toward the humans like claws. The alien admirals stared wide-eyed. The storm didn't behave like that with anyone else. Not with their fleets. Not with their drones. Not with explorers. Only with humans. Someone on the alien bridge whispered in trembling voice, "Why is the storm only hunting them?" No one could answer. Fear settled over every ship. The human fleet, still silent, accelerated slowly, entering deeper into the storm's swirling layers without hesitation. Their engines glowed brighter, their shields flared, yet not a single human turned back. They moved with purpose. The alien fleets fell into chaos. Officers shouted confused orders. Some called for retreat. Some demanded explanations. Some wanted to follow the humans. Others wanted to flee the region entirely. But before any decision could be made, a message suddenly appeared. An encrypted transmission blasted into every ship, every console, every device in the surrounding fleets. The signal was undeniably human. But the tone was cold, hollow, filled with ancient weight. The audio crackled before a single human voice spoke. "We told the galaxy to forget us." Every heart stopped. Every admiral froze. Every AI paused. The voice continued, heavier, darker, more painful. "You should have listened." Then the message ended. Silence hit the Council fleets like a punch to the chest. The storm roared louder. The darkness deepened. Space itself felt heavier, like gravity had thickened around their ships. The admirals suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake, something they were never meant to witness, something humans had tried desperately to hide for generations. And the humans, the tiny fleet of 12 ships, kept moving into the storm, not shaking, not panicking, not calling for help. They moved like soldiers who carried memories too dark to share, wounds too deep to speak of. Inside the alien flagships, panic choked the bridges. Tactical displays flickered. Warning lights blinked. Engines trembled. Someone yelled, "Retreat! Retreat now!" Another screamed, "Why is the storm following them? What did humans do?" But no one had answers. Not yet. The human ships vanished deeper into the storm's center. The storm tightened its grip, spiraling faster, darker, swallowing their silhouettes. Then suddenly, the storm stopped moving. Everything froze. The stars dimmed. Space went quiet. A single shockwave exploded outward, silent, but powerful enough to rattle every alien ship in the region. Sensors were crushed under the wave. Engines flickered. Shields collapsed temporarily. It felt like the universe had taken a breath and held it. Before the wave ended, another human message crackled over the comms. This time softer. Worse. Full of regret. "We hoped this day would never come." A long pause followed. Then the final sentence. "If you value your lives, leave." And just like that, the message cut. The storm roared again, louder, angrier, as if awakened by the human transmission itself. The alien generals stared at each other, trembling, unable to decide whether to run or stay and witness something that no civilization had ever recorded. Inside the storm, shadows twisted like living creatures. Light bent. Space folded. And in the middle of that cosmic nightmare, humanity's tiny fleet continued forward, illuminated by flashes of impossible energy. Not afraid. Not hesitant. Not broken. More like returning warriors approaching a battlefield they once knew too well. The alien commanders could not understand it yet. But they would. Very soon. The truth would come like lightning. The storm wasn't hunting humans. The storm feared them. Because it remembered them. Inside the cosmic storm, the 12 human ships moved like silent ghosts drifting through a nightmare. Every layer of the storm grew darker, thicker, heavier, as if space itself was trying to crush them. Lightning flashed in colors no living species had ever seen. Shadows twisted into shapes that did not belong in the universe. The alien fleets watching from outside felt helpless. Their scanners showed nothing but distortions, impossible gravitational bends, and strange energy forming and collapsing like breaths of a sleeping monster. But the humans, they kept going. Commander Relis, still watching from the Council flagship, felt something strange inside him. Fear mixed with sorrow, as if the storm wasn't just reacting to the humans, but remembering them. Each time the storm pulsed, the readings spiked beyond reason. It felt alive, conscious, angry. And every pulse aimed toward the human ships, like the storm was speaking directly to them. Inside one human vessel, the HSS Meridian, Captain Kira Holt stood at the center of the bridge. Her face was calm, but her hands were trembling slightly, hidden behind her back. She looked at the storm through the front viewport, a wall of swirling darkness stretching endlessly around them. Her crew was silent, eyes locked forward, no panic, no questions. They knew what was coming. They had known from the moment the distress signals began near the outer belt. One young officer finally whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Captain, it recognized us." Kira closed her eyes for 1 second, gathering strength, before answering quietly, "It always remembers." The officer swallowed hard, tears forming. "I hoped, after all these generations, it wouldn't." Kira didn't reply. She couldn't. Because she had hoped the same thing. Humanity had hoped for centuries that the enemy inside the storm had died, vanished, dissolved into space after the final war. They prayed the darkness would never return. They prayed their sacrifice would hold. But the storm existed. It was awake. And it was hungry again. Outside the storm, alien admirals lost control of their composure. Some shouted to send rescue ships. Some screamed to retreat at once. Others begged for communication. But the human fleet remained silent. No distress calls. No fear. Just a slow, painful acceptance. In the flagship of the Council, an officer trembled as he watched the storm's reaction intensify. Why is it attacking them? Why only them? Why not us? Relis did not answer. His mind felt heavy with dread, because deep inside his heart a horrible realization was forming. The humans weren't entering the storm to escape it. They were entering because they knew they had to. Inside the storm, the human fleet passed through another layer. Space cracked like glass. Voices echoed faintly, thousands of whispers, layered together, calling old human names, forgotten battle cries, final moments from a war erased from history. Some voices sobbed. Some screamed. Some begged for mercy. A young human pilot on the smallest vessel, the HSS Ember, covered her ears though nothing physical touched her. She whispered with a shaking voice, "It remembers us, it remembers everything we did." Her commander placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Focus. Do not let the voices in. They're not real anymore. They're memories trapped in the storm." But even he looked shaken. The storm pulsed, and every human ship shuddered violently. A wave of gravitational force slammed into them with the weight of a collapsing star. Metal groaned. Shields flickered. Sparks burst from consoles. But the humans did not stop. They held their course, pushing deeper. Captain Kira steadied herself, gripping the edge of the console until her knuckles turned white. "Hold formation. Do not break. If the line breaks, we lose everything." Her engineer shouted, "Shields at 20%. Her pilot added, "The storm is reading our signatures, it's locking onto us." Kira whispered, voice filled with painful memory, "It knows us. It always knew us." Another violent pulse hit the fleet. One human ship lurched to the side, engines failing. The Council fleets outside screamed as they watched it on long-range cameras. "They're falling apart. Humans can't survive this." But just before the ship slipped into the deepest darkness, the other human ships surrounded it, pushing their engines to maximum to keep it steady. They didn't leave it behind. Not like last time. The Council generals watching outside felt something break in their hearts. This wasn't madness. This wasn't courage. This was grief, shared grief between survivors of something ancient and impossible. Inside the storm, the darkness grew so thick it looked solid. Then, something moved in it. Not a ship. Not a creature. Something else, something older. An enormous shape drifted across the storm's core. Its size was impossible to measure. Its form shifted from shadow to light to nothingness and back again. But one thing was clear, it was alive. And it was watching the humans. Captain Kira's eyes widened slightly. She whispered, "The Sentinel wakes." Her crew froze. The air felt colder. The ship felt smaller. Even the storm quieted for a moment, like a battlefield falling silent before the first shot. Outside the storm, alien admirals shouted in terror as their scanners broke trying to capture the shape. One screamed, "What is that thing? Why does it follow the humans? What did they fight?" No one answered. Inside the storm, the shape drifted closer. Its presence pressed against the hull of every human ship like a heavy memory. The humans felt old sadness rising in their chests, loss, death, sacrifice, everything their ancestors endured. But they did not flee. Kira whispered, voice breaking, "We hoped you were gone." The shape pulsed once, like a heartbeat made of darkness and starlight. And for a moment, just one devastating moment, every human on every ship felt the same thing. Recognition. The enemy remembered them. The humans remembered it. A bond formed by war, loss, and blood. Kira closed her eyes and whispered softly, "We return, because we must. Not because we want to." The sensors flickered. The storm roared. The shape lunged. And the tiny human fleet accelerated toward the core, not to escape, but to confront the ancient nightmare they had once defeated, and prayed they would never face again. Outside the storm, the alien fleets watched the unimaginable unfold, trembling in pure fear as one truth finally settled into their hearts. The storm tightened around the small human fleet like a giant hand closing into a fist. The swirling walls of darkness moved in unnatural ways, shifting backward, then forward, then twisting sideways as if space itself had forgotten how to behave. Every alien ship watching from outside felt the pressure in their bones, even from a safe distance. Their scanners flickered uncontrollably, unable to measure the impossible shapes forming inside the storm. But the humans, they continued moving, pushing deeper toward the storm's core, even as it tried to crush them. Every pulse of the storm felt like a scream, one filled with old rage, old memory, and old hunger. Captain Kira Holt stood in the center of her ship, staring into the dark void ahead. Her crew looked tense but focused, their faces pale under the dim emergency lights. Kira's voice was calm, but a quiet sadness hid beneath her tone. "Hold steady," she whispered. "We're close." Close to what? Her crew already knew. Close to the enemy they hoped was dead. Close to the thing that once tried to erase humanity from the stars. Close to the truth no one in the galaxy was supposed to remember. The storm pulsed again, sending a powerful shockwave across every human ship. The hull of the HSS Meridian groaned loudly, metal straining under invisible pressure. Sparks burst from the ceiling. A console shattered. One officer fell to the ground, blood dripping from his forehead. But no one screamed. No one panicked. They all knew this storm. Their ancestors had died in this storm. The memories lived inside them like scars passed through blood. Outside the storm, alien admirals watched in horror as their sensors finally registered something massive moving inside. Something with no defined shape but a presence so heavy that even the vacuum of space seemed to tremble. One alien scientist whispered, voice breaking, This is not a natural storm. It's a being." Another added, "No, it's a graveyard. A graveyard of something alive." Back inside the storm, the massive shape drifted closer. The darkness around it bent like it was being pulled by gravity, yet gravity had nothing to do with it. Captain Kira stepped forward, staring straight into the swirling mass. Her eyes reflected fear, but not for herself. For her crew. For her people. For the galaxy that still had no idea what was coming. Then the shape pulsed again, and something horrible happened. Every human on every ship heard a voice, inside their minds, not through speakers. A deep voice. A broken voice. A voice made of thousands of whispers layered together like a dying chorus. "We remember you." The crew froze. Tears rolled down the cheeks of several officers. Not because the voice was loud, but because it was familiar. Too familiar. It was the same voice recorded in their ancient war archives, the one their ancestors fought for generations. The voice of the enemy that nearly erased them. Kira closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were filled with grief and determination. "We knew this would happen," she murmured. "We knew the storm would call to us again." Her second-in-command whispered, shaking, "Captain, does it know we returned?" Kira nodded slowly. "It never forgot us." Another pulse hit the ship, harder than before. The lights dimmed. Shields flickered. The crew braced themselves, gripping the rails, holding their breath. The storm's voice echoed again, this time clearer, sharper, angrier. "You ran, but you cannot hide." The words stabbed into their minds like cold knives. Captain Kira whispered back, not through a comm, but as if speaking directly to the darkness itself. "We didn't run. We survived." Outside the storm, Alien officers stumbled backward as their screens projected energy readings so high they threatened to destroy the instruments. One admiral shouted, "This is a war we never heard about." Another replied in panic, "How did humans hide something like this? How did they survive this thing?" Inside the storm, Kira watched as the giant shape finally revealed a small part of itself, just a sliver, but enough to make her crew gasp. A massive eye-like void opened in the storm, glowing faintly with colors no mind could describe. It wasn't an eye made of flesh. It was an eye made of hunger. It looked at the humans, and smiled without a mouth. Kira whispered, "The Sentinel." Her crew stiffened instantly. The name alone was enough to break spirits. The Sentinel was the ancient monster humanity fought in secret, something older than the galaxy, born from collapsing stars, feeding on life, learning from every soul it devoured. The storm spoke again. "You should have died when we burned your worlds." Kira's chest tightened as old memories passed through generations, flashed through her mind. Burning cities. Screaming children. A sky filled with dark wings and impossible shapes. Humans fighting until there were no more ships left. No more soldiers left. No more voices left. She whispered, trembling, "We will not let you return." The storm shook violently at her words, as if angered by her defiance. The pressure increased, pushing the human ships downward like a giant hand trying to break their backs. Alarms blared. Engines roared. Consoles exploded. But the humans held formation, refusing to scatter. The Sentinel's voice filled their minds again. "We grow, we learn, we wait for you." Kira gritted her teeth. "You waited long enough." Outside the storm, the alien fleets watched the human ships flicker on their scanners, fighting against forces no other species had ever faced. Some alien officers cried openly. Some prayed. Some trembled uncontrollably. It was no longer a mystery why the storm hunted humans. This was not a cosmic phenomenon. This was a memory of war, alive, vengeful, hungry for revenge. Inside the storm, the humans pushed through another layer and reached a region of eerie calm. Everything went silent. Too silent. No lightning. No sound. No movement. Just a dead hush. Kira whispered, "Everyone brace. This is the eye of the storm." The darkness parted slowly. And there, at the center, floating alone in the void, was something no alien ship could ever comprehend. A human ship. Ancient. Broken. Burnt. A monument of a battle no one remembered. The HSS Valiant, a legendary vessel from humanity's final stand. Kira gasped softly. Tears filled her eyes. You're still here." The Sentinel spoke again, cold and mocking. "Your dead never left us." The crew felt their hearts break. Because the Valiant wasn't just a ship. It was a grave. A grave full of soldiers who died fighting the thing now awakening in front of them. Kira straightened her shoulders. The storm pushed harder, but she stood firm. "We are here," she whispered, voice shaking but unbroken. "And we will finish what they started." The darkness trembled, the storm screamed, and the ancient enemy roared back into existence. The storm's center shook with a violent pulse, as if the universe itself had taken a sharp breath. The ancient human ship, the HSS Valiant, floated in stillness, covered in scars from a war the galaxy never knew. Its hull was cracked, torn, burned, yet somehow still standing after centuries inside the heart of the cosmic monster. Captain Kira Holt stared at it through the forward viewport, her eyes reflecting both awe and heartbreak. The Valiant was not just a ship. It was a memory carved into the bones of humanity. A reminder of the soldiers who never returned home. A reminder of the day humanity almost disappeared forever. Her pilot whispered softly, trembling, "It's really them, the last heroes." Kira nodded without speaking. Her throat felt tight, as if all the weight of the storm had settled inside her chest. The silence around the Valiant felt wrong. Too quiet, too still, like the calm before a scream. Then the storm pulsed again, and the darkness around the ship seemed to twist in response, as if it was alive and watching. The Sentinel's voice slipped into their minds once more, deeper than before, almost amused. "You left them for us." Kira felt something inside her snap. She gripped the edge of her console, forcing herself not to shout. The crew felt the same crushing pain. Their ancestors died here. Their blood stained this place. Their last cries echoed inside this monster for generations. She spoke in a low, steady voice. We didn't leave them. We survived. The sentinel laughed, a sound made of broken stars and dying screams. Survived. You crawled away. Her officers flinched as if struck. The storm tightened around them. Lightning blacker than night cracked across the sky. The human ships shook violently, metal bending under pressure that should have crushed them instantly. But they did not break. Outside the storm, alien fleets watched in horror as the dark energy readings spiked beyond all limits. Hundreds of ships turned their scanners toward the core, desperate to understand what was happening. The council admirals shouted conflicting orders. Some begged to retreat. Some cried to send help. Some whispered in fear. What did humanity fight? But deep inside, they already knew, whatever it was too big, too old, and too hungry for any species to face alone. Inside the storm, Kira's voice remained steady. All ships, prepare Formation Gamma. Her crew jolted. Formation Gamma was old, ancient, passed down through secret human archives. It was only used in one situation. When fighting an enemy that could not be killed. The engines roared as each ship adjusted position, orbiting around the Valiant in a perfect defensive ring. Their small fleet moved with discipline that came from inherited instinct. The darkness responded violently, slamming into their shields with the force of a dying star. Alarms blared. Sparks flew. Consoles shattered. But every ship stayed in formation. Kira whispered to her communications officer, "Signal the Valiant. See if anything still listens." Static. More static. Then, a faint heartbeat-like pulse echoed back. Not mechanical. Not electronic. Something else. Something alive. The crew froze. One officer whispered in a breaking voice, "There's still someone inside." The idea alone made their blood run cold. The Valiant was centuries old. Nobody could survive that long. Nobody. Yet the pulse continued, weak but present. Then the sentinel spoke again. "We kept them, because they were strong." Kira's hands curled into fists. The storm twisted around the Valiant like black smoke wrapping a corpse. The darkness caressed the broken hull as if proud of its trophy. And then, something inside the Valiant moved. A soft glow appeared behind one of the shattered viewports. The glow grew brighter, spreading through the ship like veins lighting up one by one. The human crew gasped in shock. Kira stepped closer, her heart pounding against her ribs. The light pulsed again. A message, an ancient human emergency beacon, activated from deep inside the ship. Kira whispered, barely breathing, "That's a distress signal from the last battle." Her crew stared in disbelief. Distress signals last hours. Days at best. Not centuries. This wasn't a machine running. This was a memory waking. A memory the sentinel refused to let die. The storm's voice thundered in their minds. They begged for mercy. We learned from them. We grew from them. The officers shook, their hearts breaking. They could almost see visions, soldiers fighting in corridors, blood on metal, desperate cries in the dark, people clutching each other as the storm swallowed their ship. The last stand of humanity's greatest warriors. And then, one final whisper. They screamed your names. A wave of grief hit the human fleet like a physical force. One officer collapsed. Another covered his mouth to stop a sob. Kira stared at the Valiant with tears forming in her eyes. Her parents told her stories of the final war. Her grandfather cried whenever he spoke of the fallen ships. The Valiant was more than a wreck, it was a tomb filled with legends. And the Sentinel had kept them. For itself. Kira whispered through clenched teeth, "You will release them." The darkness stirred. Lightning flashed. The Sentinel's reply was icy cold. No. The storm slammed into the human fleet with catastrophic force. Shields cracked. Hulls bent. Systems overloaded. But still, not one human ship broke formation. Their ancestors died to stop this monster. They would not run. Not this time. Kira shouted, "Activate the cores." Her engineer's eyes widened. "Captain, if we activate the cores now." "I know." Kira snapped. "Do it." The small fleet trembled as ancient blue light ignited inside each ship, a hidden power nobody in the galaxy knew humans possessed. The light spread outward, forming a massive sphere of energy around the Valiant. The storm screamed. The Sentinel roared. Lightning shattered. The darkness recoiled. Space cracked open like glass. The alien fleets watching from outside saw the storm explode in colors no mind could understand: blue, white, gray, black, colliding violently. The human ships pushed harder, forcing the sphere to expand. Kira stepped forward, whispering to the Valiant as if speaking to the dead. "We're here now. We will not leave you again." The storm's voice was filled with fury. "You cannot save them. You cannot stop us. You are too small." Kira closed her eyes and whispered, "We are humans. Small is how we start." The sphere expanded again. The storm cracked. The Sentinel's shape lurched backward, disoriented, confused. For the first time, it felt fear. And it remembered why. Because the last time this blue light appeared, humanity destroyed half its body. The shockwave from the human's blue energy sphere tore through the storm like a blade of light slicing through night. The darkness recoiled, twisting and screaming with a sound that wasn't truly sound, more like a vibration inside the soul. The Sentinel staggered back, its massive form trembling as memories of the last war flashed across its ancient consciousness. It remembered burning. It remembered pain. It remembered humanity standing against it. Small, fragile bodies with impossible courage. Captain Kira Holt felt the ship shaking, metal crying under the pressure, sparks bursting from consoles, but her eyes never left the center of the storm where the ancient human ship, the HSS Valiant, floated like a fragile ghost. Blue lines of energy crawled over its surface, lighting up the ship's broken body as if waking it from a death too long endured. Kira whispered softly, "Hold on, please hold on." Her engineer shouted, voice cracking, "Captain, cores are overheating. If we keep pushing." "I know." Kira snapped, though her voice trembled with fear. "We hold the line." Inside the storm, the Sentinel stopped retreating. Its swirling body condensed, folding into a more solid shape. Massive tendrils of darkness extended outward, glowing with faint red energy. The storm grew agitated, rising like a beast wounded but not defeated. And then, with a deep roar that shook space itself, the Sentinel lunged. A wave of pure darkness slammed into the human fleet. Shields shattered. Panels burst. One ship spun violently, almost breaking formation. Crew members were thrown from their stations. Kira grabbed the railing to steady herself, breathing sharply as her ribs throbbed with pain. The Sentinel's voice echoed inside every mind, louder than ever. "We learned. We grew. You cannot bury US again." The humans gritted their teeth. Memories of the old war flooded them, stories whispered by grandparents, old recordings locked in secret archives, nightmares passed down through bloodlines. The Sentinel was not just an enemy. It was a wound humanity never healed from. Inside the smallest human vessel, the HSS Ember, a young pilot named Lyra wiped tears from her eyes as she tried to steady her shaking hands. "Captain, why does it hate us so much?" Her commander, an older man with a scar down his cheek, looked at the storm with heavy sorrow. "It doesn't hate us, it knows us. We are the only ones who ever hurt it." The Sentinel roared again, unleashing another blast of crushing pressure. The human ships were pushed downward, dragged toward the storm's swirling base like leaves pulled by a whirlpool. Metal screamed. Engines struggled. Lights flickered. But every ship held on. Kira shouted, "Stabilize the ring. Protect the Valiant. Do not break formation." Her crew obeyed instantly. They were afraid, but their fear was mixed with something stronger: duty. Humanity was born from survivors, raised by trauma, shaped by battles no one else remembered. One officer whispered through tears, "My grandmother told me, the Sentinel used to whisper to the stars. She said it wanted to eat everything. I thought they were stories to scare kids." Kira responded softly, they were warnings. The storm pulsed again. This time, something inside the Valiant awakened. A soft hum spread through the ancient ship, vibrating across its broken hull. Then a dim light appeared in its central core. A heartbeat. A signal. A spark of life. The pulse grew stronger, spreading across the ship's interior like veins carrying fire. For a moment, Kira forgot to breathe. It's responding, she whispered. They're still with us, in some way. The Sentinel reacted instantly, roaring with fury. Its massive shadow surged forward, wrapping around the Valiant like a serpent ready to crush its prey. Human officers screamed warnings. The storm walls twisted violently. Space cracked, reality bending under the Sentinel's power. Kira slammed her hand on the console. Cause to maximum. Push it back. Her engineer shouted, Captain, the reactors can't handle this. We don't have a choice. The entire human fleet flared with blue light, expanding the sphere further. The Sentinel screeched in pain, its body tearing into fragments of shadow before reforming again. The darkness vibrated with rage. You failed before. You will fail again. But they didn't fail, Kira whispered. They bought us time. They gave the galaxy peace. And we won't let their sacrifice be for nothing. A sudden burst of energy shot out from the Valiant, an ancient distress signal coded in human DNA. It carried voices. Real human voices. Faint. Broken. Echoing through centuries. The crew froze as the message played across their ships. Children crying. Soldiers shouting orders. Families whispering goodbyes. A captain calling for evacuation. A mother singing to her child as the darkness closed in. The voices faded into a single sentence. Humanity, live. Kira's eyes filled with tears. Her crew sobbed quietly. Even silent veterans trembled under the weight of those last words. The Sentinel's roar shook the storm. They are ours. Kira whispered, not anymore. The Valiant's core brightened, blinding white light breaking through the ship's fractures. The storm reacted violently, swirling into chaos. The Valiant had awakened. Not physically, not in life, but in memory. The ship held the last echo of every soul that died in the war. Their courage. Their pain. Their final stand. Kira felt their presence like warm hands touching her shoulders. The crew felt it too, strength filling their veins, courage rising from nowhere, hearts pounding with something older than fear. The Sentinel lunged again, trying to crush the Valiant before the awakening completed. The storm walls buckled inward. Energy surged. Space trembled. The aliens outside the storm watched, speechless, as light and darkness clashed in a battle too ancient and too terrifying for words. Kira shouted with everything in her soul. For the Valiant, hold the line. The human fleet roared forward with engines blazing, forming a protective ring around the ancient ship. The Sentinel struck again and again, but the blue sphere held strong. Each blow lit the storm like a dying star. The human ships rattled violently but refused to break. Their ancestors had died here. Their ghosts whispered courage into their hearts. Then, with a final pulse, the Valiant released a shockwave of pure white light. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't an attack. It was a memory. A single message sent to the storm. We are still here. The Sentinel recoiled in confusion and rage. For the first time in centuries, the darkness remembered fear. The Valiant's final pulse of white light spread through the storm like a shock of pure memory. Soft, warm, painful, and impossibly alive. For a moment, time felt slower. The darkness trembled. The Sentinel froze, its massive shadow body shivering as if something inside it had cracked open. The storm walls flickered between black and blue, fighting against themselves, unable to decide whether to consume or retreat. And the tiny human fleet stood in the center of it all, shields collapsing, engines overheating, hulls bending, but hearts unbroken. Captain Kira Holt stared at the Valiant through blurred vision. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Every alarm screamed inside the bridge. Heat poured from the reactors. Panels sparked and burned. But she ignored everything except the ancient ship glowing like a wounded sun. She whispered softly, "You're fighting with us, even now." Her crew heard her, tears rolling freely now. They could feel it too, an invisible warmth, like 1,000 hands on their shoulders, like the voices of the past whispering courage into their ears. The Valiant wasn't alive. And yet, somehow, it was still standing. Still protecting. Still refusing to let humanity fall. The Sentinel shifted, its form twisting violently. Its voice boomed inside every human skull, louder than before, dripping with hatred, fear, and confusion. You should have died. You should have vanished. How do you still stand? Kira lifted her chin, staring directly into the swirling monster that had once nearly erased her species. Because you don't understand us, she whispered, voice trembling but steady. Humans fall. Humans break. Humans bleed. But we always stand again. The storm shrieked like a dying world. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, slamming into the human ring formation. One ship spun dangerously, nearly colliding with the Valiant. Another ship's shields burst into flame. A third lost half its weapons section. But none of them pulled away. None broke formation. None ran. Outside the storm, alien fleets watched the impossible battle in awe and terror, their screens flickering with unstable images. Admirals leaned closer, unable to breathe. Soldiers held hands. Scientists cried openly. Every species watching finally understood the truth. Humans weren't small. Humans weren't weak. Humans were survivors of a war the galaxy never knew. Inside the storm, Kira steadied herself as the Sentinel rose higher, its shadow expanding until it filled half the sky. The pressure increased. Panels cracked. Lights died. The rooftop plating on the Meridian trembled violently as if it was about to tear open. The engineer shouted, voice hoarse, "Captain! Shields down! Hull fractures growing! We cannot take another hit!" Kira whispered back, "We don't need to take another hit. We just need to hold long enough." "Hold for what?" her officer cried. "For them," Kira said, staring at the Valiant. As if hearing her, the Valiant pulsed again, brighter than before, shining like the last heartbeat of a dying star. The Sentinel roared in anger. "Stop them!" Dark tendrils lunged toward the ancient ship. But the human fleet moved instantly, pushing forward, blocking the attack with their own bodies, small ships slamming themselves into the path of the darkness. Metal shattered. Shields burst. Engines exploded. The storm screamed. The humans held. A young human pilot on the Ember whispered shakily, "Captain, my hull is giving out." Her commander answered with a soft, father-like voice, "Then give everything you have before it does." She nodded, tears streaming, and rammed her failing ship directly into a shadow tendril, her engines burning until the very last second. The explosion tore a hole in the Sentinel's attack. Kira felt her heart shatter. But she whispered, "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." The storm shook violently as the Sentinel reared back, gathering its full power. Darkness spiraled upward, forming a massive vortex over the humans. An attack strong enough to destroy stars, erase fleets, and end civilizations. It pointed the vortex at the Valiant. "This time, you die forever." Kira clenched her fists. Her voice broke into a mix of fear and fury. "Valiant! Please, we need you." Her cry echoed across the humans' comms. And then, something happened that no one in the galaxy would ever forget. The Valiant woke. Not with engines. Not with weapons. With memory. A blinding shockwave erupted from deep inside the ship. Not white, not blue, but golden, warm like sunlight, gentle like a mother's voice, powerful like a soldier's heart. The shockwave wasn't an attack, it was the collective memory of every human that died here. Voices rang through the storm. Children. Parents. Soldiers. Captains. Engineers. Nurses. Pilots. Heroes. Their final breath forming one united whisper. Humanity lives. The shockwave hit the Sentinel directly. The storm monster screamed, its form collapsing inward. Pieces of shadow ripped away like torn cloth. Space cracked around it. Its attacks failed. Its vortex dissolved. It shrank, shaking, trembling with something it had never experienced. Fear. Captain Kira whispered through her tears, "That's right. Fear us again." The sentinel tried to speak, but its voice was broken, fading. "We will return." Kira answered softly, "Then so will we." The sentinel's form shattered, collapsing into fragments of darkness that melted into the storm's dying winds. The storm began to unravel, layers of shadow peeling away like smoke blown by a strong wind. Light returned. Gravity stabilized. The walls of the cosmic storm cracked apart. Alien fleets outside gasped as the entire storm collapsed like a dying star, dissolving into harmless particles of drifting dust. Inside the now quiet void, the human ships drifted, scarred, burning, broken, but alive. Kira collapsed to her knees, her strength finally giving out. Tears fell onto the console as she whispered, "We did it, you did it. Valiant." The ancient ship floated silently, its last spark fading. Its glow dimmed slowly, warmly, like a candle going out after fulfilling its purpose. One final whisper echoed through the human ships. "Live." And then the Valiant went dark. Kira's crew cried softly. Some placed their hands on their hearts. Some whispered thank yous. All felt the weight of what had happened. Outside, the galaxy stared in stunned silence. For the first time, they understood. The humans never had a small fleet. The humans had a survivor fleet. The only ones left from a war too great to remember. And now the galaxy knew one more terrifying truth. If something could make humans hide, then that something was coming back. Captain Kira rose slowly. Her voice cracked as she gave the final order. "Transmit to the galaxy."